Hello, guys. Today we bring you 21 facts that will absolutely blow your mind. It is not about how much we are earning but how we spend the money. Did you know that you can find more happiness by spending on someone else rather than yourself? Of course, studies have shown that spending on luxuries such as dining at expensive restaurants or staying at expensive hotels can help you relax your mind as well as give you some sort of peace. But recent studies show you can feel a lot better by spending half that amount of money in a better cause. We have no morals as long as our elders don't. According to one of the oldest psychology facts, in the 1960s, Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram infamously conducted an experiment that he thought would prove Americans wouldn't accept immoral orders. For the test, volunteers were told to deliver shocks to a learner who was an actor, little known to the real volunteers, if they got an answer wrong. To Milgram's horror, the participants continued delivering shocks, even when the learner screamed in pain. Our brain secretly thinks long-term deadlines are not very important. Pretty much everyone has procrastinated at one time or another in their daily lives, even though we know deep down that it would make more sense to get a jump start to our day than to turn on Netflix or stare at the wall. We actually prefer unimportant tasks because we know we'll be able to complete them. There's also evidence that when we see the deadline is in terms of days, rather than months or years, it is threatening because we feel more connected to a day-by-day passing of time. Our ancestors believed sugar and fat were good things. For our ancestors, getting a quick hit of energy from sugar and then storing it as fat, or eating plenty of fat to keep their bodies fueled, meant more energy in the long run. But now we focus on more timely, frequent meals that allows us to balance our energy levels throughout the day, so we don't need to store an excess amount of fat for the long run. Nowadays, it is also very easy to eat the fat and sugar. Power makes people less caring towards other people. In a Stanford prison experiment, college students were randomly assigned to be either a prisoner or guard in a fake prison, and as you guessed it, the fake guards started harassing the fake prisoners. It got so bad that the 2-week experiment was cancelled after 6 days. That is very extreme. However, recent studies have shown that when people feel like they're in a powerful position over someone else, they become worse at judging a person's feelings based on their facial expressions, indicating a loss of empathy. Did you know we can convince ourselves that a boring task was fun if we weren't rewarded for the task? Volunteers in one psychology of learning and motivation study did a boring task, then were paid a sum of money to convince someone that it was actually pretty interesting. The ones who were paid more knew deep down why they lied, as they got a higher reward and still thought it was boring, but the ones who received a smaller reward actually convinced themselves it really was fun, because their brains didn't have a good reason to think they were lying. Social media is psychologically addictive. Told yourself you just quickly check your Facebook notifications or your Instagram feed, and 15 minutes later you are still scrolling. Told yourself you'd only check that one workout video and ended up watching cake recipes instead. You're not the only one. Part of that has to do with the infinite scrolling, as you can stay on the site without actually interacting and clicking. Your brain doesn't get that stop signal, and since you're on the platform, even though you know you want to leave and do something more productive. Pygmalion effect. People rise to our high expectations and don't rise if we have low ones. Basically, we do well when other people think we will do well, and we don't do well when people expect us not to do well. This was deduced from a famous study in the 1960s, where researchers told teachers that certain students had high potential based on their IQ tests. Those students did indeed go on to be high achievers, thanks to their teachers' expectations in them. This is also another reason to always encourage young people, especially kids, to do well. We'd rather skew the facts than change our beliefs about people. Humans hate cognitive dissonance, which is when a fact counters something we believe. That's why when we hear that a loved one did something wrong or garbage, we undermine how bad it really was, or we tell ourselves that science exaggerates when a study tells us we really need to move more. We will always find more problems instead of solutions. Ever wonder why when someone solves a problem, another one takes its place? The world isn't against us, rather our brain is, in a sense. Researchers asked volunteers to pick out threatening-looking people from computer-generated faces. As they showed people fewer and fewer threatening faces over time, they found that they expanded their definition of threatening to include a wider range of faces. told to us by researcher David Levari, PhD. We look for human faces, even in inanimate objects. Most of us don't see people in a piece of toast, but we've all noticed cartoonish faces seemingly staring back at us from inanimate objects. That's called pareidolia, and scientists think it comes from the fact that recognizing faces is so important to social life that our brains would rather find one where there isn't one than miss a real-life face. We keep believing things, even when we know they're wrong. Researchers in one science study gave volunteers false information, then a week later revealed that the facts weren't actually true. Even though the volunteers knew the truth now, fMRI scans showed that they still believed the misinformation about half the time. It's one of the psychology facts to know that could make you smarter. When you feel like you're low on something, you obsess more over it. Psychologists have found that the brain is sensitive to scarce resources. For an example, when you're low on cash, you only keep on stressing over due bills, instead of working on ways to resolve the issue. When farmers have less dues and loans, they tend to perform better and optimistically, which allows them to plan ahead, and better as they don't spend their time worrying about dues. Too many choices can become paralyzing. The whole paradox of choice theory has been criticized by researchers who say it hasn't been shown in studies. However, there is some evidence that our brains prefer a few options over a ton of options. When single people meet more people from dating apps, those people had more diversity in factors like age and occupation. On the other hand, when singles meet lesser people from dating apps, they have lesser demands. Too many choices can become paralyzing. You remember things better if you've been tested on them. One of the most useful psychology facts is that testing really does work. One study published in the journal Psychological Science found that people are more likely to store information in their long-term memory if they've been tested on the information as the more, the better than if they just study and don't need to remember it right away. Too many choices can become paralyzing. Your short-term memory can only hold on to so much information at a time, unless you try one of the simple ways to improve your memory, which is why you use chunking to remember long numbers. For instance, if you try to memorize the number 80,433,371, you probably naturally thought something like 804-333-71. There's a reason that certain color combinations are hard on your eyes. When you see bright blue and red right next to each other, your brain thinks the red is closer than the blue, making you go practically cross-eyed. Same goes for other combinations, like red and green. Memories are more like pieced-together pictures than accurate snapshots. Even people with the best memories in the world can have fake memories. The brain generally remembers the gist of what happens, then fills in the rest of it, and it is sometimes inaccurate, which explains why you insist you met your best friend at a party 3 years ago, even though she's adamant she wasn't. Our brain wants us to be lazy. Conserving energy has been a thing even in old days when food was scarce. Our ancestors still had to be ready for anything, so they would naturally conserve their energy. Unfortunately for anyone watching their weight, that still holds true today. A small study published in Current Biology found that, when walking on a treadmill, volunteers would automatically adjust their gait to burn fewer calories. You're programmed to love the music you listen to in high school the most. The music we like gives us a hit of dopamine, and that feeling is stronger in our younger days as our brains are developing in that stage. Everything feels more important around age 12 to 22, so we naturally end up emphasizing those times and hang on to our musical memories of those days, as it is somewhat a safe space.